n permutation 3 minus 6 times n combination 4 equals 0. Find the value of n. So let me write the problem statement. Let me write it here. So we're given n permutation 3 negative 6 times n combination 4. Now this equals 0. So we want to solve for n. So I could bring this to the other side. That is, I could bring what I have here to the other side of the equation. In other words, I'm adding 6 times n combination 4 to both sides of the equation. So what you have is n permutation 3 equals 6 times n combination 4. Now, before I carry out any other step, let's make a quick recall of some of the things which we might have forgotten. And that is, whenever you have n permutation, or let me just say, if you have n permutation r, so let's use this. So if you have n permutation r, now this is the same thing as, so whenever you have n as your as what you have up here, so n permutation r is just n factorial, that is whatever you have at the top, the factorial, divided by n minus r, n negative r factorial, then times r again. Sorry, for permutation, n permutation r is just simply n factorial divided by n minus r factorial. But for combination, that is n combination r, so that equals, so that's going to be n factorial divided by, so the subtraction of this from this, so this from this, so you have n negative r factorial then times what you have here again, so you have r factorial. So the difference between the permutation and the combination is there is an extra product at the denominator for the combination formula. And also we know that if I say 3 factorial, so what I mean is you keep on multiplying 3 until you get to 1. So 3 times 2 times 1, which is also going to give you 6. So if you have 4 factorial, so that implies 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And 4 times 3 is 12 times 2, that is 24. Now to come to the problem that we have here, so we have n permutation 3. So I'm going to lay credence to the formula I have here. So n perm 3, it says is going to give us n factorial divided by, so n minus 3, n minus, so my r now is 3, so it's going to be n minus 3 factorial. Now this equals, so what I have here is 6, so this is going to be 6 times, so n combination 4, so this time around this is my 4, so now I'm going to lay credence to this because I'm using combination now. So n comp 4 is just n factorial divided by n minus 4 factorial, then times the 4 factorial I have here. So let me go ahead and simplify this. What I have here is n factorial, so you have n factorial divided by n negative 3 all factorial. So whenever you write the factorial goes along with whatever you have, the preceding term you have there. So don't write n separate and factorial separate. So that's a fallacy. So 6 times n, this is 6 times n factorial divided by, this is n negative 4 factorial and then 4 factorial. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply. So when you cross multiply, what you have is going to be n factorial times n negative 4 factorial times 4 factorial. So times 4 factorial. So that is this times this. And this equals 6 times n factorial, then times what we have here, which is n negative 3 factorial. So based on the explanation I gave you here, I can break this down, and I can also break let's start by breaking this down. So we have n factorial times, so you have n negative 4 factorial, now times 4 factorial like we did here. This is just 24 as we obtained here. This is 4 factorial, so this equals 6 times n factorial times n negative 3 factorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So I want to begin to remove some things out step by step so we don't confuse things here. So I'll divide both sides by 6. Divide both sides by 6. So this goes off. Now 6 in 24 is going to give me 4. And also what you'd observe again is I have n factorial here, I have n factorial here. So I could also divide both sides by n factorial, divide by n factorial. So this n factorial crosses n factorial. So what I'm going to be left with is n negative 4 factorial, like we have here, times 4 equals n negative 3 factorial. So this is what I have. Now the next step I'm going to carry out, I want to explain something to you. Now, like I explained above here, we said 3 factorial. Now this is equal to 3 times 2 times 1. Now, what if I told you, what if you have 4 factorial? Now, based on the explanation I gave up here, so 4 factorial is the same thing as 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Now, this is the same thing as 4 times, now 3 times 2 times 1, like we obtained here, we said this is 3 factorial. So this is 4 times 3 factorial. So similarly, you can check that 5 factorial is just going to be 5 times 4 factorial. In other words, anytime you want to find a factorial of any number, it's just going to be the first, that is the number itself, times the deduction, the factorial of the deduction of the original number itself by 1. So what I mean is, if I told you to find n factorial, that is just simply n times n minus 1 factorial. Like we did here, 4 times 4 minus 1 factorial, 5 times 5 minus 1 factorial. So if I said n minus 3 factorial, so what would that be? Okay, let's see. So n minus 3 factorial is just simply n minus 3 times the deduction of what you have here by 1. That's going to be n minus 3, then minus 1 factorial, like we've been doing above. So this is just going to give us n minus 3 times n negative 4. That is n minus 3 minus 1, that's negative 4 factorial. So I'm going to use this in taking the next step or carrying out the next step to solve this equation here. So what I have here is n minus 4. So you have n negative 4 factorial, then times 4. Now this equals, so n minus 3 factorial, as I've seen here, can be written as n minus 3 times n negative 4. That is n minus 3 times n negative 4 factorial. And you'd observe you also have n negative 4 factorial here. So I could just divide both sides by n negative 4 factorial. You can see when I'm writing my n negative 4, I wrote along with it the factorial sign. So you don't leave the factorial sign for any of them. So this goes off and this goes off. So what I'm going to be left with is, you can see I have just 4 here. That is 4 equals n negative 3. So to find n, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Add 3 here, and you add 3 here. So 4 plus 3, that gives me 7, and then this goes off, so you have n. So my n is 7, right? So should in case you just get confused while I'm going through all this step, you can watch this video again. I'm very sure when you watch the video again, you have a very good concept of how I or the steps I took. Now note, there's something which is very important here, and that is the step I took at this point here. The reason why I had to lay credence to this technique was because I had to find a way of clearing n-4 from this part here. And the only way I can do that is by seeing how I can reduce any of the factorial terms such that it is going to contain the one that I want to clear off. And that was why I took this step here. So our answer here is our answer is 7. So let's check the options. So the answer is 7.